Sensationally silver, because you are.
Welcome, everyone, to Sensationally Silver, A State of Mind, conversations with extraordinary, ordinary persons of age, people who are going to bring you information, inspiration, and validation. Join us. Hi, everybody, and welcome to Sensationally Silver, A State of Mind, conversations with extraordinary, ordinary persons of age. My guest today is Libby Carr, and I recently heard her speak. I was so fascinated. So I invited her to come and talk to all of you. So, Libby, thank you so much for joining us today.
You're welcome. Pleasure to be here.
Tell us your story. I want to hear it again, and I want everyone who's with this podcast to hear it.
Okay. It happened when I was 24 years old, so many, many years ago. I had recently graduated from college in Eugene at the University of Oregon. I grew up in Eugene, and I had been active in environmental politics in college. So I happened to get my first job after college was working as the assistant to the Northwest representative of the Sierra Club, a guy named Brock Evans, who was a great environmentalist for many, many years in the Northwest and in the country. So the issue that was developing and had been developing for a long time was whether or not another dam should be put on the Snake River, which forms the Oregon, Idaho, Washington border. And a group of conservationists had contacted the committee, House Public Works Committee, that the bill was before, and they were trying to get a final resolution as to whether or not this last free-flowing section of the Snake River should be preserved in a wilderness status or not. The Army Corps of Engineers had already put 5 or 6 dams on the river, and they wanted to build another one, and the conservationists didn't want that to happen. So 3 congressmen from that committee decided that they wanted to come out and take a firsthand look at the canyon themselves. So 3 of them and some of their staff came out, and a party was organized where we had professional outfitters guiding us down the river in 3 large pontoon rubber rafts that were 25 feet long, that are used in war-torn areas as temporary bridges. And we were meeting up. We had a party the night before we put into the river, and I met the Congress people, one of whom was the guy named James Key from West Virginia, also known as the King of Strip Mining. So he was happy to meet me, and I think that we reminded each other of. He reminded me of the grandfather who had died before I was born from the stories I had heard from my mother. And I think I reminded him of his granddaughter, and this figures in later on in the story. I'll bring it up. So we all put in on these 3 rafts the next morning, and there were about 20 of us in each raft with a whole mountain of duffel, and then the person guiding the boat was standing on top of the duffel with these super long oars trying to navigate through class 5 rapids. And so the boat I was on, I wanted to sit in the bow of the boat to get the best view. And we all had on those old enormous orange life jackets that had the old iron hooks on them. I don't know if you remember that or not, but it was before the quick release plastic fasteners had been invented. So you had to really push on the side of the hook to get the vest off. And so we had set out, and we were very quickly we were going through Class 5 rapids, which is the largest, most rolling, um, churning river. And all of a sudden, the guide lost control, and the boat went into the bow of the boat, fell into this enormous boiling hole in the water, and the raft just kept going and flipped completely over. And I was sitting in the bow, and so I was kind of at the fulcrum of the boat, and I was pinned up underneath the raft. So it was a 5-ton raft on top of me in very unsavory river conditions with a life jacket keeping me up. So my only choice was to not breathe, and that's what happened. And I couldn't breathe, and I was young and a strong swimmer, and had this all of a sudden the biggest adrenaline rush that I had ever had before or after, fighting for my life to push against the buoyancy of my vest to get away from the boat, and it wasn't working. And so after a while, I ran out of energy, and I remember sort of saying goodbye to myself, and quite sad because I acknowledged that I thought I'd be an old lady when I died, but that wasn't going to happen. And I gave up, and I was out of energy, so I gave up trying, and I was just calm and starting to drown. And I then I don't really remember if I heard a voice or I was just totally became laser focused on a question that came into my mind, which was, Libby, are you ready? And I knew at that moment I was being asked that question, and I was being given a choice to go or to stay in this life. And I started to think about it, because when I was asked the question, it was as if God placed his hands on my head and transmitted all this knowledge and information that if I chose to go, I would be just fine, that there was nothing to fear. And in fact, I would be better off than I was in this world. And I just was assured of unconditional love, and that it was going to be great. And I started to say, to respond, but I was analyzing back and forth. And then the voice said, Libby, what is your answer? We don't have all day here. And that kind of got my attention. And I then said, okay, I think I want to, my answer was going to be, I think I want to go. I think, I want this new adventure. So I started to say that answer when all of a sudden, unbeknownst to me, out comes my answer of, no, I can't go. I haven't finished yet. And I was surprised, but with that answer, I was physically imbued with the energy on a molecular level and the will to try again to get out. So I tried again to push against the raft, and I popped out from underneath it. So we had probably gone from the Class 5 rapids into a pool of slack water. So that probably helped immensely. But I had quit being interested in living, and all of a sudden I had that will to live back, and I tried, and I got out from underneath. So that's what happened. Um, that was in 1972, And immediately after it happened, a few days after it happened, I saw my parents, and I was close to my folks, and I relayed the experience to them. And I remember feeling as if they believed me. They knew I was telling them the truth that I experienced. And then they both said, I wouldn't talk about it if I were you. And and I was in a conundrum of trying to figure out what happened because just 2 years earlier, I had taken a break during college, and the first year I spent as a Vista volunteer, and then the second year I was psych aide on the admissions ward of McLean Hospital outside of Boston. And I was on staff, and I kept the keys on the admissions ward, and quite a few people were there because they heard voices. So,
Like you had, right?
yeah. Yeah, so all of a sudden, here I am, and there's nothing written about this near-death experience. There's no name for it. It's 3 years before Raymond Moody's book, Life After Life, was published. So I would go around every morning. I'd take myself out for an early morning walk, and I would replay this incident, and I'd take both sides of the question. Okay, Libby, you just had a little temporary psychotic break, no big deal. You were obviously in a difficult situation. And then the other side of me would say, no, that's not the truth. The truth is I heard the voice of God. So I would debate that. But every morning by the time I got home, I would just sort of tell myself, okay, just speak the truth. And it always came down on the side that I had heard the voice of God. I never could convince myself of the first idea.
But you weren't speaking about it to anybody. There were no folks listening to this
No,
story.
I wasn't speaking about it. My mother, who's also was in medicine, she basically said, "This is kind of weird. I wouldn't talk about it very much."
Yeah.
And having worked at the psychiatric hospital, I didn't want to be labeled as crazy. That's not a fun label to wear. So I just sat for a long time in silence and musing about it, thinking about it. And one of the things, though, that did come up for me was who answered that question? Because I had been prepared to go, but all of a sudden, no, I can't go. I haven't finished yet. Came out. And after much thought about that, I figured out it was my daughter who needed me to be her mother, which is what happened 8 years later. So she wasn't done yet. She hadn't even gotten started in this life. So that's the only logical, but then we're not dealing with logic here anyway. um, so that's what happened.
And then, because life goes on, you didn't leave. What what was the effect of that, or maybe the many effects of that experience? Even though you're keeping it to yourself, you're not telling anybody. After you told your parents and they said, "Shh, don't talk about it." What happened?
Well, the next big thing that happened was I came across Raymond Moody's book, Life After Life, which was the first book that I had ever. I picked it up and I read it and I wept over every page because I could relate. And he interviews. It's a compilation of his interviews with people, and I think he had about 100 people in that book. So it was many accounts, and it was just life changing for me to come across that book because there was nothing that I heard about or read about in the intervening 3 years. So after reading Moody's book, I was then really, and he named it the near-death experience. So that was very much on my radar. And then about 10 years later, I heard a woman interviewed, in a Seattle radio talk show, and Kimberly Clark Sharp, and she was head of the Seattle Ions group. And it was the Seattle Ions is the first group out in the country outside of the association itself that met. And so I started going to those meetings on a monthly basis and hearing lots of NDE stories and telling mine, and meeting my tribe, if you will, a
So,
whole group of people who had had this experience.
so finally, there was validation for this thing that couldn't even be defined really, except in your own mind until that point. And IANS is the International Association for Near-Death Experiencers. Is that right?
Near-death studies.
Near-death studies, of course, because there's an S on the end. And the NDE is near-death experience. Okay.
Right.
So, but this isn't the end of this story. I know it keeps going.
No, I think the effects, it was only about 2 years ago that I finally, after about 50 years, I was able to write up my experience. I wrote an essay detailing the story, and then the next section in that was the effects that it's had on my life, and of which there are many. First and foremost, that all NDEers or most talk about is that I lost my fear of death, because you got to peek over the other side and see that there's really nothing to fear. In fact, one can certainly look forward to the next chapter, the next big adventure. And so that's been my major change in attitude about dying, and going into nothingness. That's not part of my equation any longer. And that had been a long time struggle. I had been throughout college, high school and college, very agnostic. I would debate, is there a God? Isn't there a God? Driving myself crazy. And finally, this NDE experience absolutely answered that question for me. I never had to debate that again within myself for the rest of my life, and that's still the case. Um, it was, oh, I have so many thoughts, and again, like so many people in the NDE experience, it's very hard to describe it with English how this actually felt, but it was such a an alive and relevant experience that I have never forgotten it. And it changed my view of religion. I now definitely do believe there is a God, and that it doesn't matter what your religion is. It's like walking into an ice cream store. What flavor of ice cream do you want? It doesn't matter. We all have our favorite flavor, but it's still all ice cream. You
Hmm,
know,
that's a lovely
it,
analogy.
it's still all ice cream.
And one of the things that I know for myself is that when something so profound changes my life view, I don't have to convince anybody of that. It's
Right,
it's not something that's up for debate as far as I'm concerned. It's like you can believe whatever you like. I've been exactly where you are. Doesn't matter. But I know what I know. This is inside me. It's changed me. And that's it. It's
right,
the fact of life for me, fact of existence.
right. And I certainly have experienced that. It's not my business whether or not somebody believes me or not. Because I'm still, it's my experience.
Mhm.
So I often have that discussion, or I've had several times that discussion with my daughter where she'll say, "Well, Mom, I'm sorry, I just don't believe this." And I say to her, I know I was exactly in the same place you are now before the raft turned over.
Yeah, yeah. I want you to be sure and include in our talk today is the whole angel thing, because that's another dimension of this that has been
Right.
so
So
powerful.
so that was an outgrowth of another long range effect was I became aware that I would hear or get nudges or intuitive uh, leadings to do something in my life, and so several years ago, I played for 6 years. I was Mrs. Claus with my Santa husband, and we talked to lots and lots of kids. And many of those kids, while they were waiting to talk to Santa about what they wanted for Christmas, they would ask me, waiting in the wings, how do the reindeer fly? And so many kids asked that question. That was the top one. They also ask, how do you get all those toys in the bag and around the world in just one night? Those are the big three.
And people need to understand these children are asking this of Mrs. Claus. She's standing there in
Right,
costume, wife of Santa over here. Yeah.
right. So after that first year, I really started thinking about it. And then, I gave them the only answer I knew, which is what I got as a child. Well, it must be magic. But no matter how wonderfully you might say that answer, they were always disappointed. They were looking for more detail. And it must be magic is not much detail. So, several years after being Mrs. Claus, I had a lucid dream, which are dreams that are very memorable, that don't fade with time, very much like the near death experience. So, in this lucid dream, this very sweet angel shows up and very nicely says, Libby, how do the reindeer fly? And I said, well, shoot, I don't know. And my husband had written a book in answer that after that first year, and in his book, a children's book, he says they get magic corn. And I said, well, look at Paul's book. They get magic corn. That's how they fly. And I just dismissed it and didn't think about it much. A whole year later, at exactly the same time, 3 a.m. of Christmas morning, I get another lucid dream from this angel who now is really angry with me. And she says, Libby, how do the reindeer fly? And all of a sudden, I got her meaning and intention is that she expects me to answer this question and to make it a top priority. And so after the dream, I start thinking about this, and I am aware now of her existence, that I can be in touch with this angel and communicate back and forth. And she would often say, I would become aware of her at that liminal space of when you're waking up from having slept all night. And I would get ideas, or she would um, encouraged me, and in one of those conversations I became aware that I could communicate back and forth. And I said to her, well, if you want me to write a children's book, which I've never done before, I'm not a professional author, um or I wasn't at that time. I said to her, well, you have to solve all the problems, and I'm sure there'll be plenty. So when I get stuck or there's an obstacle, I'll talk to you about it, and you better have a solution. And so I felt her agreement. So we started down that path. And the first one where she proved herself to me was I said, well, we'll need a website. And she said, yes, look up howdothereindeerfly.com. And I did that and it was available, which I found quite shocking because it's a pretty common question that everybody knows about for Christmas. We've all, but it was available. So I have that website. And right now my website is being brushed off and gussied up. So it's not upright now, but it will be in a week or two. So I started writing the book and got got it all done, and then I had sent it off to a publisher, and a person on their staff said, "Oh, I think you need to." Um, I think it still sounds like magic to have the answer be light going through the crystal, shining on the carrots, activating the atoms in the carrots, levitating the reindeer, and then they shoot forward. That was my original manuscript. And this young writer says, I think you need to dig deeper, Mrs. Carr. And I was really not happy. I was tired of this project. I wanted it to be over. And, but I sat on it. And after 2 weeks, I said to myself, she's right. It's not a very good answer. So I started searching around for somehow to find a better answer. And I came across Rupert Sheldrake and Matthew Fox's book that they wrote together called The Physics of Angels. And in that book, they review the literature written by three theologians from the Middle Ages: Thomas Aquinas, Hildegard of Bingen, and Dionysius de Abigard. And they said when they were talking about Hildegard that in response to the question of how many angels are there, they said that she said there are enough angels for every man, woman, child, and animal from the whole past, the present, and the whole future. So I read that about 10 times and let that sink in. And I said, well, there's my answer. Each reindeer has their own angel who can fly next to them, lifting them up.
That's such a beautiful idea that there's an angel for everything and everybody. I mean, we just
Absolutely.
have this being that's ours, that's with us, each of us
Right,
through time.
right.
I love
So
that.
my illustrator, I had the book beautifully, beautifully illustrated by a guy named Scott Ward. And I went back to Scott and I said, I'm changing the text. I'm quite a bit. And you need to add angels in the illustrations. And I'm not going to pay you another dime because I had already paid him a lot of money. And he said, no problem. So he went back and on top of the originals, he painted very, very faint an angel behind each reindeer, demonstrating that point. And then the final page is a beautiful angel lifting up the reindeer as he's flying.
There it is.
So
Yeah, that's
there's the and then the kids love that answer. They're not disappointed at all. In fact, it's a tangible, meaningful answer. So to me, it gives the kids the knowledge that they have their own angel. And the importance of that is all of us, and especially when you're a kid. But if you knew you had an angel who is on your side, who's rooting for you, I think that will impact your whole worldview and give you much more courage going forward.
so, Libby. My background in my career has been in the field of addiction. And over the years, I've listened to thousands of alcoholics talk about how they got sober. And this isn't as irrelevant as it sounds like it is. It sounds like I'm going way off on another tangent, but I'm not, because everybody I've ever heard talk about getting sober, which means having a reprieve from an illness that's going to kill them, because this is a terminal illness. How it came about was through a surrender to something greater than themselves. It's like, for me, I always pictured it this way. It's like someone in a British drawing room pulling the bell pull for the butler and saying, I need something. And this desperate alcoholic says, please help me, pulls that bell pull. And that's the beginning of sobriety. After all kinds of chaos and big drama and going to jail and having accidents and all kinds of things, when there's that request, please help me, not get me out of this and I'll be good, but just help me. And to me, when I heard you speak, it sounded like that same kind of dynamic, that there's this something that's there waiting to be called on.
Right.
And when it is called on, when that bell pull is pulled, shows up right there, ready to help. I find that so beautiful. And the other part that I got when I heard you speak, but it was days later because I was ruminating about this, was that the angelic realm goes all the way from trolls, as I understand it, all the way up to archangels. And in that continuum are elves. And when you read that lovely poem, The Night Before Christmas, he talks about Santa as a jolly old elf. And of course, that's part of the angelic realm. It makes total sense to me. The way my thinking goes, it's like naturally that would be an elf. The angels are involved. It's all part of the picture.
Right.
So with this book, what's going on with the book? Tell us about that.
Okay. What's happening now with the book? A couple of years ago, I said to my angel, we need to work on sales. I didn't sell very many books, and I had 1,000 books printed. And I said to her, because I'd been calling on independent bookstores, getting them in bookstores. I hadn't gone the Amazon route for some reason. I'm looking into that now, but um, I said to her, what are you going to do about sales? They're kind of low. And she says, you should do a flip book. And I said, what's a flip book? And she said, it's when there's a book on one side and you turn it over and there's a different book on the other side. And call this other one Angel Stories. So now I expect you to collect angel stories from various groups or whomever, and put together an anthology of angel stories. So that's what I'm in the process of doing now. One group is my IONS friends, people who are interested in the near-death experience, and another group is children's hospitals that I hope to talk to all over the world, and a third group that I've identified is I'm in the process of contacting a lot of people who've been interviewed by Oprah Winfrey. Since years ago, she started the Angel Network, and and many of the people that she interviews have a very wonderful and active spiritual life. So I want to see if those people have an angel story they want to share. And then my long range hope is that someone from each of those audiences will take on the new publication each year with a new set of stories for in time for Christmas. And then the proceeds from the book for those audiences can be used to do good works within their groups, within those audiences.
There's a lot of creativity going on there, and a lot of people's experiences fueling one another's imaginations, and lots of validation too, lots and lots of validation for the children, for the adults, everybody. And that book is sort of for both audiences, isn't it? I shouldn't say sort of, it is. The flip part, one part is
Right.
for adults, those adults who are reading the book to children, but then there's a book for them too, correct?
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Wow. Wow.
Exactly.
Libby, you've had quite a ride here with all
I
of.
have. So I just think it's brilliant because that idea was all my angel's idea. I didn't think that up. So I want to emphasize this point is that angels are like ideas in that, and this is an idea in a book called Big Magic by Elizabeth Gilbert, where she talks about ideas and personifies them. And it occurred to me that angels are like ideas in that neither one of them have a body. And both of them, both angels and ideas, are searching for humans that they're madly nudging, chattering with to partner with a human and form a partnership so they can make a good idea into a good deed. To because neither angels nor ideas have a body. They don't have hands and feet. They need a human being to listen to them and then to become their part, form a partnership. And to me, that's really the significance of this book, is to plant that seed again. And I think that angels are knocking on many, many doors right now to of humans to let them in because the world needs their help.
So we are surrounded by agents of inspiration that if we can allow ourselves to be open to that, we can create on this plane where we dwell in this body. We can move things around and make it happen, like you're writing your book and
Right.
making it happen, making it what we'd call real. Like that other isn't real, it's more real than this, but it's, yeah, making it available and realizing it. Yeah, that's
Right.
that's that's a fascinating idea that angels have to do with, my words, not yours, inspiration. These, the nudges that you're referring to, where we get an idea and it takes us down a path that is wonderful for us and hopefully wonderful for others, maybe the whole world.
Yeah, we all can relate to having a feeling or having an intuition, but taking that a step further is maybe that came from someone that was not you, and that there could be more of a give and take, a conversation back and forth, and you can ask for and often get much more help and assistance, and even doing something that doesn't seem logical, but you get the overwhelming feeling you should do it, and then generally great things happen from following that intuition and not your brain, not
Wow.
your intellect, to
Okay. So,
rationalize it away.
oh, I know we push these beautiful, beautiful ideas away sometimes, and then they have to knock harder, kind of like your angel coming back. And in
Right,
case you weren't listening, it's exactly the same time on exactly the same day, 1 year later. So, big clue that this is important.
right.
Oh, all right. Well, we're out of time. I want to ask you, if you will, if you can kind of say something to anyone who's listening, anyone who's watching, just a final thought from you to all of us, Libby.
Have the courage to listen to your angel and follow instructions.
That's pretty basic.
Yeah.
Yeah. Great advice. Thank you so much for being here
You're
today.
welcome.
Yeah.
You're welcome.
Pleasure. And thank you to all of you who have joined us. We will see you next time. Great news, everybody. Our premier hair care product line, Sensationally Silver, is now available on Amazon. You can order it so easily, you can get it so quickly, and you can be so sensationally silver.
Sensationally silver.